1. Quick backstory info. Me and my family moved into this house around 4 years ago. So this is 4 years worth of creepy moments. By the way, please give some advice. As you'll find out in the post, I think I'm in danger. First experiences. The first couple were just small ones when we first moved in. Like the first night, there was just some creepy vibes about the kitchen. When we finally got the house set up, I would see a dark hand close my bedroom door, frequent nightmares. Me and my brother would wake up with scratches. I have extremely small nails due to anxiety, so it doesn't make sense why I'd have scratches that literally had cut me on me. We also don't have pets, and I didn't have a partner at this time. One time, me and my brother also found footprints in the shape of a boot on the roof. But that one could have been someone killing a spider. We're still not entirely sure. The second couple of instances are a bit more extreme, but not too much. One time my mom had a friend come to stay, and at dinner and in my house. We have a hallway that leads straight from the door to the living room. This is an open space sort of floor plan. So while eating, this lady looks into the hallway and just stares with this weird look on her face. No one really says much, and she tells my mom something. Later that night, we're talking, and I tell this lady about the weird shit that's happening, and she proceeds to tell me that at dinner she saw a man in the hallway, and then he went into the garage that is connected to the hallway as well. But my mom told me to just not believe it. Another couple of things. One time I had a school project to film a vlog, and when going back over the footage from inside my house, in the video, you can see my glass start moving by itself while my back's turned. Wish I still had the video, but this was around 3 years ago. And over the years, my mom finally told me that when she's home alone, she sometimes hears things or will see a shadow run past. There was also another time in my early teens, where one of my boyfriends stayed at my house while alone, and he went to the garage to get a drink, and it sounded like someone whispered in his ear. He ended up telling me later that night, and was extremely freaked out, but I don't know how much of it was true. Now on to the most recent and, in my opinion, creepy stuff. As of late, I've been having these dreams that are like nightmares, but I know I'm awake. Best way to describe it is sort of like in Inception, but I fully know I'm in the dream. So anyways, in these dreams, it will always be my mum in them, and it will always start with me and her, and I will say, I know this is a dream, I know you're not really her. And the dream mum will agree, and usually the dreams aren't scary and they don't try to harm me. I just get obviously freaked out and start screaming I need to leave, and the dream versions of my family try to help me leave, and then I wake up, having an anxiety attack. I didn't think these dreams held much significance until recent though. About 2 weeks ago, I had another of these dreams, but this one was different. It felt darker, like I was in danger. The dream people were dream versions of my family, like always. And I told my dream mum that I know this is a dream, and I would like to leave like always. Except this time she kind of morphed in the dream, and told me she was a demon, and that I couldn't leave. The rest of the dream is sort of a blur. But I remember getting attacked by my dream family, and in the dream, I felt like I was glitching out of that dream and into another dream. Eventually I woke up, and the time was 3 a.m., and I stayed awake after that, and was thoroughly freaked out. Ever since that dream, though, I've been waking up every night at exactly 3 a.m. No matter how late or how early I go to sleep without fail, it will be 3 a.m. I've always just been terrified of my room, as of late. I don't know why, I can't really explain it, but I just don't feel safe or welcome in my room, and it's only felt like this since that dream. Another thing, around 3 days ago my boyfriend stayed over, and I was very tired, so we went to sleep at about 10 p.m. The room was pitch black, but I have a built-in wardrobe with my TV inside one of the sides, so the doors were open for that side. I don't know what time it was, but when I get woken up by my boyfriend and half asleep and annoyed, I'm like, what? My boyfriend is just pointing at my wardrobe while laying down and goes, people are upside down. And I'm like, what people? And he still just points at the wardrobe and goes, the people. Half asleep, I just assumed he was talking about my plushies and fucking with me, and so I just grumbled and went back to sleep. I then woke up again at 3 a.m., where we both got up and watched a movie. While watching the movie, I was like, so why did you wake me up to tell me people are upside down? And he just looks at me and goes, what? And I repeated myself, laughing again, for him to just go, that never happened. I slept through the whole night. After asking him over and over if he was just fucking with me, he held his ground that he didn't know what I was talking about. I should also add that, while writing this, I am home alone, nowhere near a PlayStation controller, and my PlayStation just turned on by itself. 2. This happened a few years ago, so excuse me if the details are a little blurry. I was close friends with this one girl, Alira. It was July and we were hanging out. Alira told me about this really creepy house down the road from her place. At this point, we had to be exploring abandoned houses most of the summer, and she had never told me about this one before. I asked her about the house, and she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She told me how a few months ago her and her other friend went into the house. Nothing seemed weird or out of place. But she told me as they stood in what was left of the living room, they heard a deep growl come from all around them, not just behind them or above them, but the sound surrounded them. They sprinted out and went home, not really ever thinking about it. Me being dumb, it piqued my interest. We had been to a handful of houses before, and nothing really ever happened. So I convinced her to take me to this house. She kinda laughed a little. She agreed to take me, as long as we get baked beforehand. Sure, okay, I'm not 100% sure that's going to help, but okay. So she packed a bowl, did her thing, and we were off. It was a 15-minute walk from her place, and you couldn't really see the house from the street. It was surrounded by high trees and grass. We found a little path into the house. It was only maybe 20 feet from the street. We walked around the property. There wasn't a bird to be seen or heard. There was just absolutely no wildlife around this house. We walked around and found a jar of nails, a jar of pee and rusty nails, an altar of some sort with 2 chairs in front of it. There was a little shed-like thing 10 feet from the house, with a copper wire leading to the attic of the house. We found 2 mounds of dirt that had grass growing on top of it. Kinda looked like graves. Altogether, it's pretty weird, and I'm uncomfortable. This place feels weird, and we haven't even gone inside this little cottage yet. Around the side of the house laid a homemade ladder on the ground, and it had been there a while. We finally made our way to the front door and made our way in. The place was half burnt up, huge holes in the ceiling. To your left was shelving, and to your right was the living room. It had 2 couches, burnt up a little, a TV, a table, and through the living room was the kitchen. The kitchen was burnt to a crisp. No way to get into the kitchen to look around. Same with the back hallway leading to the bedrooms. Alira walked through the living room, so I sort of followed her, not really entering. This place was giving me the creeps. There were gas jugs littered all over the place, and the place just felt heavy and unwelcoming. As I was looking around, I was leaning on the couch looking at a wallet. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above us. Like I said, there were holes in the ceiling that lead to the attic. There's also no possible way to get to the attic from inside the house. Freaked out, I looked at Alira to see if she heard it too. She looked at me, and suddenly the footsteps were coming from all around us, above us, beside us, in front of us. We freaked and ran through the front door and ran back home. After we calmed down, we asked each other if we heard the footsteps. We were 100% positive we were alone in that house. For weeks after, I would see a dark mass in my room, and out of the corner of my eye. I was having a string of bad luck. The last time I saw the mass-like being, I got into a car accident, and when I looked in my rear-view mirror, I saw this black mass in my back seat. I have no idea if it was connected to the house we went into or what. But I am never going back in that house again. 3. When I was young, we had a tree that was next to our garage, basically behind the garage, inches away from our back fence. This tree I would climb a lot because once you get to the top, you can see the next street over, or see if people are walking the back tracks, which was a path behind our houses, neighbors, that follow the river. I live in New Zealand. One day, me and my sister decided to climb it. It was daytime and the sun was out, so why not? My sister led the way. I was right behind her. Now, this was a fairly big tree for a 10-year-old, my sister being 8, so we climbed a fair bit. It wasn't until we nearly got to the top where we heard our neighborhood friend yelling. We both looked out. Turns out he wasn't yelling at us. But as I was about to turn around to start climbing again, my eye caught the back window of the garage like a magnet. What I saw standing there was a young girl. She looked about the same age, maybe a few years older. She had a white dress. Her hair was long and curly, but also neat at the same time. Also, it was white. Her face looked pale, her arms were pale. This whole image of her was basically white with gray shading, mainly due to her being almost see-through. And she stood there, looking right at me with a tired expression. I was literally frozen, wouldn't say frozen scared, but frozen like still confused, because at the time, I never knew ghosts and spirits were a thing. So after what felt like 5 minutes of looking at each other, she glided out of sight inside our garage. And when I say that, I mean like it seemed like she had wheels as feet and just rolled out of the frame. I looked at my sister in confusion. Her face was just as confused as mine. She didn't say anything, but her face told me I saw it too. So that to me confirmed it. I made my way down fast. My sister hit the ground 1 second after I did. Made my way to the door of this garage, opened it and looked inside. My sister trying to peek through the window. She didn't want to go in, so I went inside looking everywhere in this garage. Beside the beds that were stacked up underneath the tables, above the roof. There's no sign of this girl, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't anything living. I ran out. I was grateful that I have witnesses that witnessed the same thing. We spoke each other and our family about this story from time to time when we all get together. After this incident, I had been, I think, haunted. Something follows me around place to place. Surprisingly, because I thought spirits would find it hard to keep up with the car. They don't try to haunt me, it's more like they just watch me. I saw shadow figures, legs running through the house, no top body. I've seen what I believe to be a grim reaper, like no joke. This shadow figure was holding a stick. Didn't see the blade, but a stick being held by a ghost with a huge black hoodie. Now thinking of it. The first ever sighting, long before the incident with my sister, was in my room, where I was the most scared. Couldn't sleep because there were noises that came from my wardrobe every night. I could only sleep if I was under my blankets, but one night I felt the urge to just peek out from the blankets. When I pulled the blanket open, big enough for one eye to peek through, I'm telling you, there was an eye looking right back at me, inches away from my small little peek hole. That was the very first incident, then the girl in the garage, then the Grim Reaper. I didn't even know what a Grim Reaper was until I told my friends in school, and they told me what it was. One incident where I was in a dark room looking out at the dark night, I saw in the reflection of the window that faced behind me, a hand slowly reached out from the hallway, latching onto the frame of the door. The door was wide open, showing the hallway. Hallway light was on. It was weird because I can vividly remember each finger of the hand slowly fall into place. When I looked behind me, it wasn't there. I looked back at the reflection, and it was gone. Another incident, 2 years ago. At this time, 24 years old, I spent the whole afternoon gaming up to 7 p.m. Outside was dark, the whole house was dark, because no one was home, and no lights were on, not even in my room. I walked past the bathroom, which is open, heading towards the kitchen. As I left the kitchen to walk back towards my room, there was a groaning noise in the bathroom as I passed. More like a human acting like a dog, just groaning. I froze in front of the bathroom, looked inside. It was fully dark and you can't see anything but the top window. I stood there and turned the light on and saw nothing. So I walked back into my room and started gaming again. I told my girlfriend to come over minutes after this, and she was scared to leave the room. This last story of my encounters. I was walking back home from my older sister's place. I was 16, maybe 18? I'm not sure. But I know I was still in school around about this time. I was walking home. It was a rainy day, clouds were dark. I came up near the alley, which was my next turn before I got home. I was on the other side of the road, so I had to cross the road to enter the alley that was about 50 meters ahead of me. Looked both ways, made sure it's clear to cross. I ran across. As I made it to the other side, I turned my head back behind me, where from the corner of my eye I see a white, dirty foot behind me, like someone was walking inches from me. I literally saw in clear, plain sight a foot. A left foot that I would presume is a girl's foot, which is white, naturally, because her foot was white. It wasn't white like the girl I'd seen in the garage. That type of white was transparent. But this white was an actual white girl's foot. It wasn't see-through. It was a wet, dirty foot. I'm unsure, but this spirit has been haunting other people like my family or close friends who were girls. My older sister was getting scratches on her overnight. The missionaries that would frequently visit me were getting haunted because one night, on my way back from a friend's house, I walked past the Mormon church and saw the two missionaries sitting at the gate. Church was closed. It was 9 p.m. at night. Shivering, holding each other, I approached them and asked why they were there, and they told me. Before going to sleep in their apartment, they felt a weird feeling like they were being watched. Time flew by and they decided to sleep it off. 30 minutes in bed, having small talk about random things. One of the girls realized the other had fallen asleep, so she turned around, looked into the corner of the room, and stated she saw a shadow manifesting, so she screamed. The other girl woke up and saw the same thing, and they both fled the house with what they wore, made their way to the church, rang the other missionaries in the area to open the church gate and to bless the house. I'm only just realizing now they walked that whole way. 4. While I have an interest in the paranormal, weird, and unexplained, I have gone most of my 37 years without an experience to share. I'm a rather normal guy, living in the suburbs. I'm husband to my wife of about 10 years and father to a 4-year-old girl. I own a home that was built in the late 70s, and we are the third family to live here. I have no information on the original owners, but the previous owners were middle-aged with 3 children. They never disclosed anything strange about the home, though they also failed to mention that the basement leaked during heavy rain, so who knows? I never experienced anything odd in the house for about 8 years until recently. I've had 4 separate experiences in the last year or so, all within my bedroom in the middle of the night, where I would wake up and see something. I have never had visual hallucinations in my past. I do not dabble with drugs and haven't drank in nearly a year. I never enjoyed it that much and decided to give it up. I've been on sertraline for a general anxiety disorder for about 5 years, and that is my only medication. I'm a heavy sleeper, and I rarely wake up in the middle of the night. During my first experience, I sat up in bed like I was reacting to a loud noise or tremor. I looked across the room, over my wife, and saw a toddler, which I took for my daughter, poking its head up from behind my wife's torso, smiling at me. I can still clearly recall the face. The form faded away very slowly. I've never seen anything like that before. I always assumed that a hallucination would be instantaneous. I must have stared at this child for 10 seconds before it began to fade. The next two experiences were very similar to each other. I awoke in the middle of the night again and saw a woman standing beside the bed, on my wife's side. Both times this woman was wearing a white nightgown, but her features were cloaked in shadow. I got the impression that she was looking down at my side. I felt a presence in the room, but I didn't feel eyes on me like with the child. Both times the woman quickly faded away where she stood faster than the child did. The final experience happened last night. Once again, I woke up in the middle of the night around 3:30 a.m. I did not sit up this time, but I looked across the room, with my head still in my pillow. Sometimes when my daughter wakes up early, my wife will put her in bed with me to fall back asleep, and my wife will go work out or start getting ready for work. When I saw that the bedroom door was open and that there was a woman looking at the bed, I assumed that my daughter was next to me and that my wife was starting her day. The woman left, and the door closed. I reached across the bed to snuggle my daughter, was surprised to feel my wife next to me, fast asleep though, breathing heavily. I was now wide awake and alert. We have a security system which I knew was armed for the night, but I still listened very intently for footsteps down our creaky hallway or the sound of the baby gate at the far end. Nothing. I get out of bed to check on my daughter. She was also asleep. I went downstairs, room to room. Everything was in order. The last experience really shook me. I'm well aware of visual hallucinations upon waking up, sleep paralysis, and all of the classic skepticism explanations to seeing what isn't actually there. I always figured that you would have to be a moron to think that such a hallucination was real. I also never put much belief into the concept of ghosts, though I personally hold out hope that some sort of afterlife and the possibility of being reached by that realm. I don't know what the hell I saw. A woman walked across my bedroom and closed the door behind her. It was as real as can be. I rarely remember my dreams, and I'm kind of attributing my experience to not being fully awake and hallucinating. But it's still damn spooky. 5. My old primary school was creepy to me. I remember always being scared of walking around the halls, and I hated being in classrooms alone. There was nothing wrong with the schools, it just creeped me out. It was quite a nice school, and wasn't that old, so I'm not sure why it creeped me out so much. One day it was really sunny. I was about 10 or 11, and my teacher sent me and my two other friends to get some sports equipment from the hall, as he wanted us to do PE outside to be in the sun. The rest of the class went outside, and me and my two friends went to the sports hall. First, I will say how the hall was structured. The hall was huge. There were 6 doors in the hall. 2 led to a path that brought you to the pitch at the back of the school. 1 was an exit to a hall leading to more classrooms, and another led to the principal's office. The other 2 doors were for the storeroom where all our sports equipment was kept, and the other to a small kitchen that teachers would use for their lunch and when cooking with their class. All of the doors in this hall were extremely heavy, and there was no way of closing them without hearing a loud bang. It didn't help that the walls were plain, so the sound of the doors echoed through the hall. If someone would come in, you could hear the door and their footsteps. We entered the hall to get the tennis rackets, and assumed because the rackets weren't needed until later, we would sit and talk for a bit before heading to PE. I checked the kitchen to check no one was in there, and we went into the storeroom to grab the rackets. The door had 2 windows, but they were only small slits. But they were big enough so you could see out of them. We stopped talking while searching for the required sports equipment and went to leave. One of the girls I was with turned off the light and went to grab the handle to the storeroom door, while the other girl and I stood behind her. Right when she went to open the door, someone walked past her. And I don't mean they were far away from the door, they were right beside it. The figure was tall and didn't even look at us. It was like a shadow. It had no definitive features apart from what I thought was football gear. We all froze and stood there staring at the door. The following conversation went as so. "Did you see that?" said the girl in front of us. Me and the other girl said yes. The girl beside me said, "It was probably someone in 6th class." The year above us, as the figure was tall. We opened the doors and I went and checked the kitchen. No one. When we had seen it, it went in the direction of the doors leading outside, which were significantly louder than the others. They were closed shut, and we hadn't seen anyone outside it. Panicked, we left the hall and just stayed silent. When we got to the back pitch where our class was, we told them all what had happened, and they all followed it up by telling us their own experiences in the hall, and hearing whispers, hearing people walking when they weren't alone in the halls, etc. I had had experiences like hearing people walk in the hall when it was empty, but never seen anything up to that point. The girl who was beside me in the storeroom described the same thing as me, a dark figure that sped quickly across the window of the door. Later that day, me and one of the girls were sent on a message for our teacher and walked a hall that was filled with pictures of classes from previous years. Everyone always stopped in that hall to look at our old class photos. So we stopped and looked at the older pictures that were taken when a lot of our teachers attended the school. On the wall, there was a memorial for a young boy who had attended the school about 20 years before us, who unfortunately passed away. My friend looked at it confused and looked at me confused. I asked her what was wrong and she said, "Wasn't that the boy who walked past the storeroom in the hall this morning?" I was pretty sure she was just trying to scare me, but the boy in the picture was wearing a sports uniform. To be more specific, a football uniform. To this day, I can't explain what we saw in that hall, and it makes it even creepier that we'd all seen it and recalled similar things. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 275. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share it with your friends and family. I greatly appreciate it when you do so. No shoutouts today, I don't think. Nope, I think the next birthday shoutout is on April the 30th, so that's fine. If you have one of your own you'd like to send in, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. I don't mind doing birthdays, anniversaries, that sort of thing. Free for subscribers, of course. I'm just adding that little caveat there because I've just about got my Fiverr profile ready. Or rather, I've got the gig part of it ready. I'll tweak the profile a little bit. And I think I might be able to launch it by Saturday. Maybe even by the end of the day today, but I think definitely by Saturday. I was taking care of the FAQ section, everything today. And it's shaping up not bad. Got my demos all recorded as well. Just need to put that together and get it up there. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.